gentlemen, welcome to the live webinar with IAMGOLD. Thank you for taking your time and joining us this morning. My name is Adina. I'm a director at Emerging Markets Capital. Emerging Markets Capital is a private mining investment firm. We're based in Hong Kong, and we help Canadian mining corporates to build strategic relations in the APAC region with mining companies, mining funds, and off-takers. Just a short disclaimer to remind you that this webinar is for informational purposes only. So this is actually a follow-up webinar. We had a previous one with Gord back in June. So we're very excited to hear company updates. And for those of you who are not familiar with IAMGOLD, it's a mid-tier gold mining company listed on TSX with IMG ticker and also trading on New York Stock Exchange with IAG ticker. And this company is holding a diversified portfolio of assets, including operating mines, projects under development and construction, like you see on the right-hand side of the slide, the Côté Project in Canada, and also has a number of exploration projects as well. So geographically, those assets are located on 3 continents: North America, South America, and West Africa. So with us here today, Gord Stothard, President and CEO of IAMGOLD. Gord, thank you for joining us today. And Gord joined IAMGOLD back in 2007 as the Chief Operating Officer, and then he became the CEO in March 2020, bringing over 30 years of experience in the mining industry. Previously, he worked for Noranda Falconbridge Xstrata organization for more than 20 years, and he was a number of roles, including operational, project, business development, and management. He holds a double major in mining and mineral process engineering from the University of British Columbia. He's a former chair of the Mining Association of Canada and also current chair of the nonprofit St. Elizabeth Foundation. So just to guide you through the logistics, Gord will deliver the presentation first, and we do encourage you to ask you any questions you might have. You can type them in the Q&A box or chat box, whatever you prefer, or you can just drop me an email as well to adina@emercap.com, and we will be happy to make them answered at the Q&A session. So with this, I hand it over to Gord, and Philip, you can share your slides right now. Enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very, very much, Adina. And we'll just get Phil to start sharing his screen. What my intent here is just to give a high-level overview. We'll get into a bit around each of the assets and also talk a little bit about where we are with Cote Gold, since it's been a while since we reported on that. So as we look at IAMGOLD, we do feel we are certainly distinct from a lot of the peer group in that we have a very strong growth position for ourselves as we move forward. As Adina's mentioned in the opening remarks, we do have a diversified operating portfolio, and recently have been producing in the 600-800,000 ounce range. But with the growth projects we have, we do look to get over 1 million ounces by 2025 and probably move up above that as we move a little bit forward from there. Geographically, we are in West Africa with our Essakane producing mine as well as our Boto advanced project. In South America, we have a producing mine known as Rosabel in the country of Suriname, and it's been producing for several years and still has several more to go. And in North America, we have a producing asset. Our smallest asset is the Westwood mine, an underground mine in Quebec. And we are well along the path to developing the Côté Gold project in the province of Ontario. So I'll touch on all of those. We do look at that portfolio specifically, and it's not by coincidence that we have a very balanced reserve and resource profile across that portfolio. We do strive to have that balance, and we do think about that strategy in terms of maintaining some equilibrium. And even though some of these jurisdictions are maybe a little more challenging from a political risk standpoint, we do know that managing it as a portfolio really helps us to offset some of that risk. I did speak about where we are with production growth. We do have the financial capacity to execute on that growth, continue to monitor our balance sheet and where we're at, and adjust it for changes in conditions and changes in expectations. But we've always held a pretty prudent position with respect to our balance sheet. And I think very importantly, our culture of accountable mining is something that we've been doing for many, many years. Our Zero Harm program will be celebrating its 15th anniversary next year. And that really helps us to look at how we look at our operation with respect to personnel safety, how we look at our operation with respect to how we're impacting the environment and what we'll do beyond that. And also how we deal with the host governments and the local communities around us. And I think that Zero Harm attitude has stood us in good measure, and we're not sitting on our hands. We do see we do need to continue to make advancements and move further down the road with respect to some of the initiatives under our Zero Accountable Mining. And we're not just around the near-term growth. We have continued to focus on exploration at IAMGOLD when a number of the peer companies really moved away from exploration for several years. And it's left us with a nice portfolio of assets beyond Côté. We have obviously the Boto project, advanced project in Senegal, which I mentioned earlier, but we do have a pipeline of other projects, which help. So just going through the producing assets we have right now, as we said, our guidance for this year is around 600,000 ounces. Our largest operation, our biggest cash flowing operation is the Essakane mine in Burkina Faso. Started in 2010, open pit mine. Current mine life takes it out to about 2027, although we are exploring rigorously there to see if we can extend beyond that. First half of this year, on a 100% basis, they mined a little over 200,000 ounces at Essakane at 1,061 all-in sustaining costs. And guidance we did increase for this year and moved it upwards a little bit to the 390 to 400,000 ounce range attributable. And we continue to look at what the opportunities that Essakane provides for us. Rosabelle in Suriname in South America is our oldest operation. It came into production in 2004. So celebrating its 17th, 18th year of operations. It's also an open pit. Current mine life at Rosabelle is a little bit longer, out into the early 2030s. And a big piece of that puzzle has been the startup of the Saramacca satellite deposit, about 30 kilometers by road from Rosabelle, which we started to bring into production in the last part of 2019, early 2020. We've been hampered somewhat by COVID, but the prospects still look very, very good for that project. H1 results H1 results were not what we expected out of Rosabelle, and as I get into it, I'll touch on it a little bit more. Updated guidance for Rosabelle right now, 140 to 160,000 ounces. Our smallest asset is Westwood, underground high-grade operation in the Abitibi region in Quebec. Year-to-date results are pretty unimpressive. As we're looking for the second half of the year, we're looking for some pickup. The first half of the year, we had shut down the operation at the end of 2020, the underground operation, due to some seismicity issues underground. And we launched a restart in Q2 with really the bulk of that production out of the underground starting here in the second half of the year. So H1 operating results were disappointing for us. Attributable production guidance, we reduced it mid-year, really due to the underperformance in Rosabelle in Q2. As well as Westwood, although to a much lesser extent around Westwood. Rosabelle had just a confluence of challenges in Q2 that led to the poorest quarter I've seen there since I joined the company 14 years ago. And the reasons being, one was COVID. Suriname during Q2 got into a very aggressive wave of infections in country. that affected not only our operation, the whole country, but also there were some collateral impacts as the government clamped down on countrywide lockdowns. A number of it created a bit of civil unrest, and there were road blockades and protests, which also impacted our operation. And at Rosabelle proper, not only did we have a number of direct infections in Q2, and in fact, we are still seeing some direct infections at Rosabelle, but with our quarantining protocol for close contacts, very often that leads us to almost shut down entire departments. And during Q2, we in both the mine maintenance and the mill maintenance departments got into a situation like that that put us behind on our maintenance programs. And the second most important item is Rosabelle this year has had the wettest year they've ever had, for at least for the first half of the year. The month of May, there was nearly 3/4 of a meter of rainfall. And obviously that heavy rain, we're used to heavy rains there, but not quite that heavy. And it impacted us with flooding in the bottom of pits and reduced access. With our Saramacca deposit, there's no hard rock there. It's mostly clay materials, which is challenging for roads, as you can well imagine, in a heavy rainstorm. As well, the heavy rains impacted the ore itself and made it very, very sticky because of the clay content. We've put a number of mitigations in place as we track how Rosabelle is doing for the remainder of the year and the new guidance. We're not uncomfortable with what we're seeing, but there are a lot of hangover effects from what went on in Q2 that are carrying us forward into the next couple of quarters here. We're monitoring it very closely, and obviously we'll keep the market apprised of what we see. As well, we did revise upward our capital costs for Cote Gold, an increase in the estimate. The go forward capital now, as of July of this year, is $930 to $980 million our share. We do have the balance sheet to manage that, but it's a lot of work yet to do there. When I think about IAMGOLD and ESG, I think we've always had a lot to be proud of. Until the recent developments in the market with a lot more interest in certain sectors of the investment market, a lot more attention being brought to these issues. For us, it's been more an issue of talking about what we do and what we've always done. And we have been very well recognized over the years by third-party organizations for what we've been able to do. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not standing still. We just came out with an announcement earlier this week around our efforts to reach zero emission intensity, net zero emissions by 2050. There's a lot of effort going to be involved in making that happen. But we do have some wonderful ideas as to where we can go with that, and are really looking forward to that initiative. Additionally, we do a lot of work with the communities in and around our mines. This one of the projects I'm most proud of is a project called the Triangle d'Eau, or the Water Triangle Project in and around the Essakane mine in Burkina Faso, in partnership with the Canadian government and a couple of other organizations, philanthropic organizations. Phase 1 we completed last year, bringing water to around 60,000 people in and around Essakane, bringing potable water. And we are working now to finance and move forward with phase 2, which will bring water to an additional 75,000 people. It's something we're very, very proud of. One interesting thing, because of our efforts and our view as to how we approach communities, it was quite interesting for us to come in a way back home to Canada with the Côté Project. And again, we're very pleased with the relationship we've built with the First Nations in and around the mine, as well as with the Métis Nation of Ontario, and continue to really look at a partnership with those local Indigenous communities, and finding ways that we can develop our mine, but also develop those communities so that they are well set into the future. So talking about Cote Gold, We announced last year in July of 2020 that we were going to move ahead with the Côté Project. We have kicked off that work basically in Q3 last year. I had the opportunity to be up at site a couple of weeks ago. Things are moving very, very well. We did announce an increase in the costs for the project, and current estimate is $930 to $980 million going forward after some leasing of some elements of the project. The increase capital estimate we saw, it was due to a number of factors. There were some estimation challenges stemming from early feasibility work whereas when we got into bidding the final contracts for the mill in what we call SMPEI, which is sort of the structural, mechanical, piping, electrical, and instrumentation, the guts of the mill, we saw a significant increase in a number of the quantities, which precipitated an increase in man hours and obviously in costs. And a good bit of that increase was due to that factor. We have seen some increases as well in earthworks. We've seen inflation, particularly in steel, concrete, and wage rates. And then we've had direct and indirect impacts of COVID itself, testing programs, quarantining programs, and just overall reduced productivity from what we would normally expect. So a number of factors built into it. We still have a long ways to go. We do feel that we are out in front of the big risks. Project engineering currently is over 85%. So a lot of the design risk is pretty much out. There's not a lot of risk left on the earthworks. We know the volumes quite well. There's some work we can do on productivities to improve ourselves. But overall, we're not seeing a lot of project risk remaining and comfortable with the estimates we put in place. Speaking to the schedule, you can see across the top where we are at the end of Q2, 27% project completion. We're completing at around 3 to 4% a month right now and are looking to accelerate that. Our first milestone we announced earlier this year was the start of major earthworks. Was originally scheduled for mid-year. We were actually able to start it in January of 2021. The next milestone that I'm focused on is the enclosure of the process building, currently slated for early Q2 next year. So a lot of attention being paid to that. Owner mining as well will start next year. We are doing contract mining, and actually the pit is starting to actually look like a pit from my visit there earlier a couple of weeks ago. We're really looking to produce first gold in the second half of 2023 and be in full production by 2024. Hopefully there's some opportunities to do a little bit better than schedule. But right now we're really focused on executing within the cash envelope that we've laid out for ourselves and making sure we hit the project. A few slides. It's such a dynamic environment. The slides can change quite quickly, and even some of these look a little more dated compared to what I saw there a couple of weeks ago. But certainly a lot of progress in a lot of areas, and we do strive to update the photo deck on our website from time to time if anyone is curious. Production profile for Côté, very attractive for us. Nearly 500,000 ounces a year on a 100% basis, starting in the initial 5 years working with an elevated cutoff grade. Production then drops back down as we work with more average grades through the medium part of the cycle. And at the very end, current mine life is on the extended case is 18 years with a couple of years of low-grade stockpile processing at the end. As well, you can see average grades. There is a lot of resource here and opportunities to extend beyond. And in fact, we are really working towards establishing a maiden resource on the neighboring Gosselin deposit. And we hope to come out with that announcement here in Q4. The really interesting about Gosselin, and I will talk to it geologically, but just what it means to the mine plan is not just tacking additional years on beyond year 18. Our target for Gosselin is 3 to 5 million ounces. There's a picture, Phil's pretty good at this. But you can see it's almost immediately adjacent to the existing open pit. You can see some of the drilling highlights that we've released over time. Some very nice high grades. Overall, geologically, it's quite similar to Côté. Average gate grades may be the same or slightly less, but there's certainly opportunities for some high grade pods. And intriguingly, this deposit is completely open at depth as well as to the northeast. So we'll continue to develop this, but understanding what it means for the overall project is important. What I point out, what Gosselin can do for us is extend that period of high grade. So it's not just the first 5 years, but maybe it's the first 7 or 8 years of a high grade that we can feed to the mill. And obviously, with Gosselin, without doing a great deal of additional stripping, really can add a lot of value to the project. As well, we have designed in a future expansion into the process plant. We're focused on building what we said we're going to build, and we'll obviously want to see how it operates, what the empirical numbers are for it rather than the design numbers for it. But you know, beyond that, we have built about a 20% expansion in the throughput into the design. It's much easier to design that in at the start than to try and retrofit it in later, and you can accommodate things much more easily by doing it that way. If Gosselin, or when Gosselin pans out, it really does, I think, provide a strong incentive for us to look at potentially increasing production. Coming around to the balance sheet at the end of Q2, sitting with about 1.3 billion in liquidity. And that's comprised of 830 million of cash and equivalents on the balance sheet, and an effectively undrawn credit facility of around $500 million. As we look at current price forecasts, we're using more conservative prices. We're using $1,700 for 2021 and $1,600 beyond that. And looking at the production profiles from our existing assets and what we think we can do with cost, we can manage through the build of Côté with our existing balance sheet. We will probably need to start drawing on the credit facility at some point next year. We will be able to make it through to the end. It's an area that we keep a pretty close eye on. Obviously, you never want to start a project that you can't come through. A few more metrics as to our financial status. You can see we do have a $450 million senior note that is outstanding, due in 2028, and that particular piece of paper is actually trading pretty close to par right now. Exploration, I'm not going to get into exploration in a huge way, but I do like to talk about the strategy of exploration. As I mentioned at the outset, IAMGOLD continued to do exploration between 2012 and up till now, when a lot of gold mining companies really just got out of it. And I don't have the slides in this deck, but we do have some slides that show the industry as a whole. The depletion of reserves and the depletion of resources over this period has been pretty substantial, especially when you look at the production levels we had. IAMGOLD has reversed that, and although we were prudent about the prioritization and the amount of money we were spending on exploration, we didn't abandon it altogether, and it set us up with a nice portfolio. At the top, you can see the producing assets. You can see Côté coming on, and Boto eventually moving up towards construction. And then below that, some more advanced projects. Some of those may not be core, some of those may be core, and we're looking at those in that respect now. And then a series of earlier and earlier stage projects as you move down in the pipeline. Some of the names may move off, and some new names do come onto this table, but we really do strive for a balance between the jurisdictions and through the development cycle, to really provide a long-term view and long-term opportunity, I guess is better described, of where we are. A few of the major milestones for this year. Côté is really the focus of what we're looking at right now. Obviously, with the operations, we need them to perform as advertised. The challenges at Rosebel and Westwood in Q2 didn't help us. And I'm comfortable that the teams at site are very focused on getting those projects back on track. And Essakane continues to have a great year. At Cote, we're going to be pretty transparent around the progress at Cote over the coming years, and really looking forward to demonstrating what a successful project that's going to be, a real flagship project for us. Bodo, we were I think a little more aggressive on it earlier this year, given the situation with Cote and our production from the existing assets. We're now looking at sort of managing Bodo a little more slowly, but still de-risking it so that when we want to make the decision, when we're comfortable that is the right time to make the decision, we can really hit it running. I'm not going to get into a lot of details on the projects and everything, Adina. I'm quite comfortable to move to a little bit of question and answer. We do have additional slides in the deck. The deck can be accessed through our webpage, but really happy just to answer questions around specifics.
All right. We actually received some questions in advance. So the first question is about Côté Project. What's the assumed gold price at Côté Project feasibility study, and how would the production plan change if the gold price increases or decreases?
So for the feasibility study, which was released at the end of 2018, we used a $1,250 gold price. The reserves and resources, for a number of reasons, are actually probably done at around $950 to $1,000, depending on how you want to consider it. So that was feasibility study. When we moved to the production decision in the middle of 2020, the board approved the construction to go ahead based on an assumed gold price of 1,350, so 1,350. There are some slides in other decks that speak to the impact of the gold price, really obviously generating additional returns, better NPVs, better IRRs. In terms of design, I don't think it would drive us to change the design significantly unless the price really dropped well below $1,200. In that case, we would need to focus in on the higher grade areas. The nature of the deposit at Côté's, for the geology sorts in the crowd, it's much more like a copper porphyry that you might see. It's big wide zones. There are higher grade areas. None of it is what people would necessarily call high grade, but there are some better grade zones. But the ore tends to be very wide. The boundaries of the ore are not sharp boundaries. They tend to be grade boundaries where it just gets progressively lower and lower grade. So higher gold prices would probably encourage us to do some additional stockpiling of lower grade materials for later in life, but I don't think it changes the fundamental plan. What I do think it does, especially when you couple it with the Gosselin deposit and what that opportunity brings for us, I think it would encourage us to up the production rate and really look at that mill expansion sooner rather than later, because the payback on it, given that the rest of the plant will already be constructed, I think there would be quite a bit of interest in us moving a capacity expansion forward. We are in Canada. It is a very sensitive area in terms of permitting. Permits are not impossible, but they do take time. So if we wanted to do that, if we want to bring Gosselin into a reserve status and bring it into the mine plan, we will need to make some amendments to some of the permits. So it's our intention to really start some of that work sooner rather than later.
So the question is about drilling at the Gosselin zone at the Côté project. How many meters of drilling is planned for the Gosselin zone for its initial resource estimate? I understand that you already released the results of around 15,000 meters of drilling. How many meters are we still expecting to be released?
We aren't going to be releasing any additional results on drilling at Gosselin before the maiden resource. So the maiden resource will be based on that. The number I had in my head was a little more than 15,000. I think it's about 22,000, but I can follow up and check on that. because it incorporates some drilling that was done by some of the predecessor companies that is also incorporated in the database. So not necessarily just what we've drilled, but some additional material in the database. What we're seeing right now, we're at about 70 by 70 drill hole spacing, 70 meters apart, and working with the third-party independent geoestimation team to determine classification at that sort of a spacing, and what sort of spacing would get us to where we could at least be in the indicated range. So we'll be doing some work on that as part of the exercise, but you won't see any further drill hole results before we come out with this maiden resource.
All right. So the next question is more a general one. What's your view on the gold prices amid recent spike in inflation rate?
There's a lot of ink being used up on that question around the world these days. I read a lot of reports. I mean, my personal view is it goes to a lot of things. I tend to take a longer term view because I build long-term mines. I find it quite intriguing over the past year, sort of the bounded ranges that you see. It's been very, very tough for gold to move well below 1,700. Equally, it's been tough to move it much above 1,800 or above 1,900 anyways. You know, there's little forays on either side, but it's been rather range bound. I think the world is still trying to understand where the inflation is going to come from. Is it going to be sustained inflation, or is it just sort of flash in the pan temporary inflation as a reaction as we pull away from the COVID pandemic? So I think that's still out. There has been an awful lot of money printed. There has been an incredible amount of money printed around the world. And obviously, you know, I'm an adherent to the belief that the endless money supply concept actually bodes well for gold prices and can, in the medium term, provide an even stronger basis, floor price, if you will, and opportunity for gold prices to move up. The other piece is if you look at current reserve and resource levels amongst the gold mining companies and the current production levels, it's going to be a real challenge for gold supply to stay at the levels it's at right now. Beyond 5 years, it's kind of tough to sustain that. And I think as that time period becomes closer and closer and more relevant, and people are worried about the money supply, and if gold actually starts to generate quote unquote shortage of supply, it could have some really impressive impacts on the gold price. Still a lot to be seen. I'm by no means a pundit, but I read a lot about it. I think at IAMGOLD, what we do though is we focus on the risk side. We don't want to be too punitive in our assessment of what the gold price is. But given that right now, the majority of our mines are sort of low grade mines, higher cost mines, we need to be prudent and use conservative gold price assumptions as we move forward. Once Cote and eventually Bodo are up in production, we're producing over 1 million ounces. And if we can get our costs down into the median or second quartile, I think that would provide us the opportunity maybe to be a little bit more aggressive when we're assessing what gold prices can be.
We actually received another question related to gold prices.
No problem.
So it's about the all-in sustaining cost at Rosabel Saramacca.
Yeah.
Which is around 1,700 per ounce.
Yes, it was 1,700 for Q2. And that was really, it's a volume impact. I mean, normal production for Rosabel in prior years would be in the neighborhood of somewhere around 70 to 100,000 ounces a quarter. It's been a while since it's been at that level. And as we return the mine to those levels, our expectation is that we can move that price well down. So it's a bit of an aberration, that $1,700. We don't like it. It's obviously not a lot of fun for the site. As we conquer some of the issues we had around COVID, management of COVID, as we do additional remedial work on the on managing rains. And as we just get further into the sequence and we get some additional higher grade areas stripped out, we are going to see a significant improvement in all-in sustaining, especially at Rosabelle. The other piece we are doing this year is we've launched an internal program looking at productivity enhancement and cost reduction. We had a diagnostic done at Essakane a couple of months ago. We're just launching into the implementation program there right now. At Rosabelle, we're just about to begin the diagnostic program. COVID has sort of been a bit of a barrier for us to starting that work, but we really do want to look at how we can improve the cost profiles. We did similar programs, I think in 2014 was the last time we did it. We saw a lot of benefit from it. But over time, you do see creep away from that, that higher productivity, better cost profile situation. And we felt it was time to go back into both those operations and see what we could do to shake them up and put, get the numbers as lean as we can make them, especially given the nature of, mature lower grade mines. You always need to have an eye on costs. We brought in a bit of a new management team at Rosabelle that come from a background of turnaround and contractor mining, which is really with a strong line on costs, a hard line on costs to manage downward. So it's something that we're very, very focused on.
The next question is about maiden resource. So what would be the maiden resource estimate at the Gosselin zone mean for the current development and future production at the Côté Gold project?
Okay, so I mean, I can't give you what the final number is, but our geologic target for resources was 3 to 5 million ounces. So Côté itself, M&I resources are 10.2 and inferred resources are around 3.8, something like it's around 14 million ounces altogether. So adding another 3 to 5 million out of Gosselin, I think is attractive, especially understanding that the deposit remains open and we can drive it in certain directions. So we're very excited about that. What it means, and I sort of spoke to it earlier, but I'll say it again. The most important opportunity I think that Gosselin provides to the long-term mining plan is adding additional years of higher grade material near the start of the mine. So with Côté itself, we can run 5 years of high grade. With Côté plus, and I don't know if, yeah, Phil, could you just show sort of year 6, 2029 and beyond? Yeah, right in that area. If we can add another couple of years of higher grade production from Gosselin, that would be, I think, very, very important to the overall project economics. The second opportunity, as I mentioned, was the ability to increase throughput. Right now, we have about a 20% expansion through. It would take us a little bit of time to get there, but we could potentially coincide bringing something like that on after 2 or 3 years of operation when we really understand how the existing plant works from an empirical standpoint. Again, having a significant supply of additional ore out of Gosselin, some of it very near surface, very low stripping rate, really gives us a strong basis for considering something like an expansion. And then the last impact would be just continuing on and pushing those last 3 low grade stockpile years well out into the future and just filling in with direct mining out of Gosselin in that interim period. Right now, the mine life is about 18 years with Gosselin, and depending where we see it, we're probably in the mid 20 years of production, even with an expansion. And we continue to explore there and would really look. I mean, my hope for Côté is that it's a 30-year mine life.
It's a very exciting project, and
it is
support for sharing.
It is, and it's and it's in a great location. I mean, we're pretty much halfway between Timmins and Sudbury, 2 of the top mining cities in Canada. It's located. The deposit is 6 kilometers off the main highway, so it's very easy to access. We have rail lines We're upgrading the power line near site right now as part of the project. So it's in a very strong location. It's easy for us to staff it. And we really do believe we're building the mine of the next 30 years, not the last 30 years. At Cote, we're going to start the operation with automated haul trucks and automated drills, so driverless trucks, if you will. That technology we feel is well established now in the world. And we don't want to get in a situation where we build an old mine and then try to convert it to a new mine later. Let's just build the new mine now and make it work.
Great. Yeah, we don't have any more questions at this point. And thank you, Gord, for staying with us, for joining this webinar. That was really exciting, and
no problem.
Wish you all the best with the
Côté
project. And hopefully you can travel soon to Hong Kong.
Hopefully we can travel soon. Hopefully we can travel soon. Yeah, and I just invite, you know, either working through EMC or going on our website. If you have any follow-up questions, there's always some numbers you can get a hold of, and always happy to have a chat.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day and good night.
You too. Bye-bye.